China just gave a command that sent shockwaves through the global financial system. Stop using the US dollar. Just 6 words, but they carried the weight of a seismic shift. For decades, the dollar has been the foundation of global trade, and for China to walk away from it signals something far more profound than a currency dispute. It signals the end of deference, the end of compliance. China is no longer listening, not to Washington, and especially not to Donald Trump. Years of sanctions, chip bans, export controls, and relentless tariffs have pushed China into a corner. But instead of folding, it's coming out swinging. The conflict between these two global superpowers has evolved. This is no longer just a trade war. It's an economic Cold War, and the stakes are rising. It's not just about keeping Chinese goods out of the American market anymore. The United States is now going for the jugular, trying to cut China off from the global financial system altogether. Just weeks ago, US officials demanded that the Asian Development Bank stop giving China any loans. Their argument: China isn't a poor country anymore, no special treatment. But to Beijing, this isn't just economic policy. It's a slap in the face, a public humiliation, and the pressure isn't stopping there. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bassant has been making the rounds, delivering a clear and chilling message to allies and institutions alike. Cut ties with China, or face consequences. In Spain, when a government official merely hinted at a friendlier stance toward China, Bassant fired back coldly. That would be cutting your own throat. Behind closed doors and on international stages, the US is wielding its most powerful weapon. Not missiles, not drones, but the dollar. By controlling access to the world's financial arteries, Washington is trying to box China in. Tariffs remain brutally high, some as steep as 30%. And Trump is now demanding not only that China sell less, but buy more. More American goods, more American influence. But there's a problem. It might not be worth. Take the renewed push to label China as a developed country. That move triggers a cascade of consequences. No more favorable trade terms. No more cheap loans. No more global support packages. The US Reactivated the PRC is not a Developing Country Act, a 2023 law that essentially tells international bodies like the World Bank and the UN to stop treating China like a struggling nation. On paper, it sounds bureaucratic. In practice, it's a strategic chokehold. But even this isn't enough. The US wants more control, more obedience. And Bassant made that clear when he publicly attacked the very institutions meant to stabilize the global economy, the IMF and the World Bank. These aren't rogue banks. They're lifelines for dozens of developing nations. Yet now, the US is using them as tools of leverage. Follow our rules, Bassant implied. Or else. What he didn't say out loud was even louder. These institutions now risk becoming little more than extensions of Washington. And still, even as Bassant was calling for unity, Trump took the stage and did what he does best: undermined the entire strategy. He threatened more tariffs, hinted at more economic isolation, and reminded the world that in his America, unpredictability is policy. One day it's sanctions, the next a delay. No one knows what's next. And that's the point. The chaos is driving investors to the brink. Confidence is evaporating. Billionaires, once loyal, are quietly turning against Trump. Global trade is slowing, and countries that once aligned with the US are beginning to ask a dangerous question. What if we no longer need Washington at all? That's the fear keeping American strategists awake at night. If the US continues weaponizing global institutions, the rest of the world might simply walk away, build new alliances, create new financial systems, leave the dollar behind. And yet, despite it all, China isn't flinching. It's adapting. The Qatar Investment Authority just acquired a 10% stake in China Asset Management Co., a powerful signal from the Middle East. China's trade with ASEAN alone hit $234 billion in just the first quarter of 2025. And the Belt and Road Initiative? It now counts nearly 150 nations as participants. Even as some countries waver under US pressure, Beijing's influence continues to expand. But the most daunting part for the US isn't China's diplomacy. It's China's industrial power. That's the real battlefield. In 2024, manufacturing made up 26% of China's economy and accounted for nearly a third of the world's entire output. That's not just dominance. That's empire building. By 2025, China's nominal GDP reached $19.2 trillion, and by purchasing power, it soared to $40.7 trillion, making it by real economic output the largest economy on Earth. And what about America? Manufacturing now makes up just 10.3% of the US economy, the lowest level since World War II. A country that once built everything now builds almost nothing. And the result is clear. Washington is no longer fighting to win. It's fighting to slow the inevitable. All of this, every loan denied, every tariff raised, every dollar threatened, is part of a desperate race. A last-ditch attempt to contain a rising power. But China's strategy is simple. produce more, depend less, and outlast the storm. And the storm is only just beginning. It began quietly in 2015. A plan buried beneath headlines, but with ambitions loud enough to echo through history. China wasn't content to be the world's factory of cheap, disposable goods. It wanted more. Much more. The goal was transformation, to become a global powerhouse in high technology. Not someday, now. The blueprint was bold. Aircraft, robotics, electric vehicles, semiconductors, medical tech. In just a few years, that vision started becoming reality. Today, China produces more than 60% of the world's electric cars. It dominates the solar panel market. In 2023 alone, over 300,000 industrial robots were installed on Chinese factory floors, more than any other country. This wasn't progress. It was what fueled this rise wasn't just ambition. It was a state-driven machine. Factories backed by ultra-low interest loans, targeted subsidies, and strategic government planning. These weren't the sweatshops of yesterday. China's industrial zones evolved into sleek, hyper-efficient ecosystems, with lightning-fast logistics, computerized production lines, and instant scalability. While the US remains the world's largest economy, it now accounts for only about 16% of global manufacturing. China, once trailing, now leads. And wages? They're no longer dirt cheap. In many Chinese cities, factory workers earn on par with parts of Europe. China's edge lies not in labor costs, but in scale. Colossal factories, seamless infrastructure, optimized supply chains. In cities like Shenzhen, a product can go from concept to prototype in mere days. Western companies can't match that speed. This blistering pace has sparked alarm in Washington. The rise of China isn't just an economic rivalry. It's seen as a strategic threat. Manufacturing underpins national power. Weapons, chips, drones, AI. The stakes are existential. That's why President Trump struck hard. Tariffs as high as 245%. Subsidies to bring factories home. A policy of economic combat meant to slow China's momentum. But China didn't slow. It adapted. Huawei, once blacklisted, now builds advanced chips domestically. BYD has overtaken Tesla in EV sales, and it's not stopping. The company is entering Europe, South America, Southeast Asia. And it's forcing a brutal question in boardrooms and Congress alike. Can America really decouple from China? It's not just about trade. It's about control. If China keeps rising, it won't just make the world's goods. It will begin to shape the very rules of global business, trade, and technology. That's the nightmare scenario for Washington. And so a new doctrine emerged, Fortress America. The goal? Build walls, economic, digital, strategic. Raise tariffs, limit Chinese tech. Forge exclusive trade pacts. Cut Beijing out of global supply chains. But here lies the flaw. America's allies are deeply tied to China. Germany's automakers depend on Chinese parts. Japan's electronics giants rely on Chinese assembly lines. The West may want to isolate China, but the world is still buying. In 2024, China exported nearly $3.6 trillion worth of goods. It posted a trade surplus nearing $1 trillion. Sanctions didn't shrink China's footprint. They made it pivot. China isn't retreating. It's rewriting the map. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing is building its own global system. Roads, ports, financing, without Western oversight. And now the battlefield shifts again, to currency. In a move with seismic implications, the People's Bank of China raised the required percentage of yuan-based trade settlements from 25% to 40%. This isn't a gentle suggestion. It's a calculated strike. In 2024, China's total trade in goods hit 43.8 trillion yuan, nearly 7.8 trillion. Currently, 30% of that trade is settled in yuan. But if the new target is met, over $3 trillion in global trade will sidestep the US dollar completely. That's not symbolic. That's structural upheaval. As trade flows through the yuan, the dollar weakens. Chinese markets attract more capital. US financial dominance erodes. Goldman Sachs estimates a mere 1% rise in the yuan could boost Chinese stocks by 3%. This is a zero-sum game. Every dollar moving into China is a dollar moving out of Wall Street. And it's just beginning. If even a fraction of the remaining trillions still transacted in dollars switch to yuan, China's financial system won't just rise. It could rival or displace in the old one. The global investment order would be rewritten. US asset markets could lose their gravitational pull. And while the financial world trembles, the real-world war is already underway. And it's electric. BYD, the Chinese EV giant, has declared war on pricing. Its vehicles are already affordable. Now it's slashing prices by 10% to 30%. For Tesla, it's a direct hit. In Europe, in Asia, on Tesla's home turf. BYD isn't just competing. It's cornering the market. This isn't about selling cars. It's about controlling the future of mobility, battery tech, AI, and the entire digital ecosystem around them. And they're just getting started. From trade to tech, from currency to capital, China is launching a full-spectrum economic counteroffensive. It's not just resisting US pressure. It's crafting an alternative world order. A faster, cheaper, tightly coordinated system with Beijing at its center. The question isn't whether China can endure the American squeeze. The question is, will the rest of the world choose to follow?